How's it going there, nerds? I'm Pruitt, this is Jim Davis, and on WebDM today, just because you've clicked, you now owe us your firstborn, because we're talking FEY. All right, Jim, let's talk about FEY. There's not a lot of them.
There's really not
in the monster manual, but let's do a brief overview.
FEY are one of those creature types that the way they're presented in the monster manual and in just sort of bog standard D&D, kind of underwhelming.
Yeah.
I much prefer to kind of step outside of Dungeons and Dragons milieu for a moment. I love the presentation of fairies and the fairy courts in the Dresden Files. Dividing the unseelie and seelie between winter and summer, the way that they have the mother, the queen, the lady, and the champion, just the interaction of FEY and the interaction between the two courts and with the mortal world, having to make a promise 3 times, being sort of having their own sense of honor and justice and courtesy. It's going to be impossible for me, after reading all the Dresden Files, to see FEY in any other way than the way Jim Butcher presents them in that novels.
I agree.
They're just really cool, and I have no problem shamelessly ripping off most of it for how I present FEY in my own games. Mm-hmm. For me, the other 2 major influences on how I like to do fairies and FEY are the movie Willow, which if you haven't watched it, it's an amazing movie. Val Kilmer, Warwick Davis. It's just an amazing fantasy movie. Some of the first special effects of its type in it, and there's some really cool presentation of brownies and fairies, pixies and sprites. And then it'd be hard to go without my favorite Fey-packed warlock, Peter Pan, who never grows old and flies and has his fairy companion Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to get past that iconic image of fairies as well. And so when I come back to Dungeons & Dragons, I look and I see, okay, we've got sprites and pixies and satyrs. Those kind of cover the sort of more iconic versions of fairies.
Yeah.
The 2 different types of hags that are Fey, green and sea. Mm-hmm. For some reason, the blink dog is a Fey, which to me doesn't track to any kind of legends or myths surrounding fairies in our own world.
Yeah.
And of course, the Dryad, never forget the Dryad. That's kind of it, really. Yeah. There's not much in the monster manual that, particularly not for higher level Fey, higher CR Fey, they're not really there, and that's a shame. One of the deficiencies of the monster manual.
Especially since there are certain spells and class features that are attributed directly to a type of creature.
Right.
Like you as a ranger, one of your enemies can be Fey.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're going to pick something that's like, oh, I can fight these 7 types of monsters, or one that covers like 20.
Or humanoids or monstrosities or something like that.
I mean, why would you ever pick that?
Yeah, the answer to that specific question to me suggests that Fey and fairy creatures are one of the types of monsters, not unlike some types of undead, or even, say, some types of elementals, where they're ubiquitous in the Dungeons & Dragons universe. And you can imagine that every little village and town and hamlet that exists in a D&D world has to deal with the local Fey. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows you don't go into that part of the woods and cut firewood there because the Dryad will kill you. Yeah. Everyone knows that the good ladies of the woods will heal your sick child if you give them the choicest bits from your harvest this year. Yeah. Those are the kinds of things that the Dungeons & Dragons world, when you're building up a world as a DM, you need to think about. Like, how do the Fey creatures that live here live? How do they interact? When a troop of satyrs marches through a region and throws a wild, raucous party and gets a bunch of the local girls pregnant because they're just randy satyrs.
Yeah, you got to debauch or get the F out of the way.
Right. Is there an adventure that comes out of that? Yeah. What does that say about the
You got to go serve them with like a paternity suit?
Paternity suit.
That's the
They're
adventure.
Track down that satyr. That's what the ranger has to do, right? And so in some cases...
Are you Randy Pan the Goat Boy? Why, yes, I am.
Yes.
Boom, you're served.
Yes. And so I kind of think that the ranger, specifically the ranger, but also the druid and Fey-packed warlocks, occupy this space in the D&D setting where they are the go-betweens between mortal, civilized society and the wild, the Fey and the monsters that live in the wilderness. But that are intelligent and presumably in some ways free-willed, that the ranger serves as the go-between for them. When a Fey needs to be punished, you call in that ranger to go after them. But when a person has violated the ancient pacts that keep these relationships going, it's the ranger's job to go to the community and go, hey guys, why'd you desecrate that site? Yeah, you really upset those fairies.
You have a whole forest, and you had to cut down that tree over there where you're specifically not supposed to.
Right. Don't come to me when your milk's spoiled and no one, no one has a, no one has a successful crop this fall.
Yeah.
So kind of taking a look back towards the monster manual, I think that there are a lot of different monsters who would otherwise qualify for FEY that don't.
Like what?
So I would say blights could be one. You reskin them so that they're less about sort of corrupted nature, and then they're sort of allies or sort of mini druids maybe, or mini dryads in this case. Centaurs are a good candidate for FEY. Even something like the Displacer Beast or a Doppelganger, those make good FEY creatures. I don't understand why, Fairy Dragon, there's already one tiny dragon in the Pseudo Dragon. Why not just say like a Fairy Dragon is a fairy? Is a FEY subtype.
Half the word.
Right, it's got half the word. You could argue that the dragon half is now more prominent. I think the fairy half should be more prominent in it.
Give it fairy wings on a human face, with some scales.
With some scales. It can look like whatever it wants to look like. But then other things, goblins, kobolds make great use of FEY. Oni, or will-o'-the-wisps. Those are all different types that I think DMs should consider either replacing their current subtype or adding on and then having basically a fairy dragon is a dragon and a FEY.
Right.
Something like that. Particularly for those DMs who have druids who want to summon more powerful types of FEY, or for players who just want to interact with something other than tiny humanoids with insect wings who flutter around.
Yeah. Even in the live play that we did, it was based around a hag.
Yeah, and her interaction, and so that's kind of how I set up that world, was that there's a night hag there, technically a fiend, but it doesn't matter what kind of hags form a coven, so she's going to take green and sea hags, form her coven, basically create 13 of them, and then this world also has FEY creatures that exist. There's a goblin tribe that's run by a FEY pact warlock who's literally, as I envisioned him, the Goblin King, who kind of keeps them in line. I just really like thinking of Dungeons & Dragons settings as whole and complete settings where the monsters in the monster manual live there alongside the mortal races that live there, and they have to get along somehow. It can't always be that adventurers exterminate everything.
Yeah.
There's just not that many adventurers in the world.
Oh man, imagine like a D&D world where that was the case.
Where
all of the monsters had been exterminated from all the adventurers.
Yes.
There's all these like dynastic hero houses
that
are left in a world with nothing to do.
With nothing to do because their ancestors had, that was that year we instituted the pogrom against the satyrs.
Yeah. And inside of 3 years, they had been expunged
and then
from
inside
our
of 3
lands.
years, and then we went after the goblins, and then no one was left when they came after us.
First they came for the goblins, and I said nothing.
You said nothing.
And then they came for the orcs.
And so it's just like, I guess it kind of speaks to the fact that these are worlds where people live and experience life, even though it's pretend, even though it's make-believe. The game is more fun when we treat it like it's a lived-in place. And to me, maybe even more than undead, the FEY really signify that they are a part of this world. Yeah. And they really lend themselves well to setting-rich encounters and adventure ideas.
Yeah, they're always in the corner of your eye, right on the periphery of normal life.
Normal life, yeah.
Right down the corner, around that path, around the bend.
Yeah, but peasant traditions of, say, laying out a saucer of milk every night for the sprites so that they bless your house. Those are the kinds of things that regular people in D&D have to get up to. Yeah. Now, when we're talking about the party, a FEY as adversaries, they're not the most life-threatening, but they're going to make your life annoying. Yeah. They're petty, and they're tricky. They're wily. Yeah. I would say FEY as an opponent of the party, that obviously death and defeat aren't the goals of the fairy. Embarrassment, humiliation, torment. Those are the kinds of things that fairies are going to want to get up to, and what make encounters with them different than, say, encounters with other types of monsters.
It's not maybe not be kill or be killed.
No.
But you just try not to get embarrassed and make sure you keep your firstborn.
Make sure you keep your firstborn. Make sure that he's not replaced by a wooden changeling who only comes to life on a full moon.
Yeah.
Like, those are the kinds of things that you really have to worry about when dealing with Fae. If you're seeking them out as allies, they're unconventional allies, right? The druid who summons and binds 3 sea hags in order to form his own coven that he keeps around with them for a day or two while he's because he needs the services of 3 spellcasting hags. That's kind of unconventional, and certainly within the druid's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
They have their own sort of sense of honor.
Yeah.
Maybe your adventuring party impresses a bunch of sprites, giving the party their own sort of pizza honor guard, their own Zaw Lord honor guard from Dresden.
I was hoping you'd go there. Bring up Toot Toot.
A little Toot Toot. And so, what can a bunch of sprites and pixies who are aligned with the party do for the party? Well, turns out there's a lot.
They can do a lot. They can fly anywhere.
They can fly, they can polymorph, they can have one of the few alignment detecting abilities in the game, they're invisible.
Yeah.
They can really make life miserable for the party's enemies in that respect. So I think that there's a lot of rich potential, even for just the 7 or 8 or so Fae monsters that are in the monster manual.
Fae patrons. So, we haven't had a lot of warlocks.
Yeah.
I don't know if have we had a Fae-lock yet in our gaming?
One of my earlier versions of an elven wizard was going to go Fae Pact Warlock, sort of wizard warlock with her, and kind of backed off of that as the campaign progressed. That's about the closest we've come.
Yeah, but say I wanted to. How would you handle a Fae Pact patron?
So I think this kind of speaks both like to the warlock class as a whole, that the patron can be a real untapped gold mine for interactions. Specifically for the Fae, if you're dealing with someone like the Queen of Air and Darkness, who's going to come in and maybe they're just casually cruel to the player or capricious in their favors. Maybe it's a burden to have this entity as a patron.
Yeah.
And even though you get all these powers and special abilities from it, the fact that that Queen Mab is just going to show up when you don't want her to is going to force you into encounters and scenarios and quests that you would otherwise avoid.
She is a GDB.
Yes.
So.
And that's just kind of who she is.
Yeah.
At the same time, we can assume that because, if you're a loyal warlock and you perform your duties well, that even her cruelness and capriciousness will end up being rewarding in the end, because she's still a Fae. She still honors her word. Her word is her bond,
right?
As it were.
As long as you stick to the letter of the word.
As long as you stick to the letter of the word.
Yeah.
And never eat anything or drink anything that they offer you.
Yep.
For more like good aligned or more, I guess, summer court style Fae, these are going to be entities that experience emotions fully and vibrantly and voraciously.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why satyrs have the reputation they do for the partying and what they get up to. And so even sort of more good aligned Fae, you don't want to get too close to them.
Yeah.
And you always want to be wary when you're around them, even if you are their champion. And I kind of think, this is one of those cases where DMs should seriously consider altering the type of bonus spells that the Fae Pact Warlock gets to really kind of tweak it towards the individual patron. I guess it goes without saying for both Fiend and Great Old One, or even Undying, but particularly with Fae, Summer Court Fae might have more fire spells, heat spells, spells that deal with emotion and recovery and sort of vibrancy. Maybe a Winter Court Fae has ice and draining and debuff type spells, spells that manipulate and deceive. That bonus spell list that they get, the expanded spell list that they get to pick from, is a really good place to sort of tweak those things. And maybe even considering altering the class abilities that they get to further reflect what type of Fae patron they have.
Yeah. So once again, thanks for watching WebDM. Go ahead and subscribe. Let us know in the comments. Head on over to Facebook. Like us over there. Tell your friends about us. Come on back next time. We can't wait to see you. Have a good one.